He goes, what do you mean you can't go? I said, you drop me off. He said, what's wrong with you? I said, I don't know. And I didn't. I'm like, I don't know if I'm having an allergic reaction, if I'm having a physical problem. I don't know what this is, but I know I can't go. And so he dropped me off at this mom and pop restaurant, this truck stop restaurant in Clinton, Missouri. And he went on down the road. He never spoke to me again.
Tulsa Talks is the podcast that is inspiring people to have everyday meaningful conversations to gain perspective and help the world.
There was a huge turning point in my life, and I did know it was a turning point, but I didn't know the Lord. I knew of him, but I was scared of him.
There's a difference in knowing of him and knowing him?
Oh, yeah, I was scared of him. But yet I knew that he loved me, and I knew from just a little tot that that there was somebody looking over me, but I'd run from him. And so I wasn't living for him, I was living for music. That was my God. Other kids would be out playing, I'd be in the house playing guitar. I didn't care about anything else. And so there came a point in my life where I was made an offer that is every lead guitar player's dream. And I was on my way to Kansas City to meet with Poison, with the band, and through a friend of mine who was a DJ.
What year was this?
This was, I've tried to pin it down in my memory. Roughly about 93.
Poison was huge.
Then. Oh.
Huge.
And CeCe DeVille was having, so a friend of mine's son took lessons from me. And he actually wasn't my friend. He was the parent of one of my students that came into Stingray Music where I was teaching, and signed his little 5-year-old up. His name was Austin, cutest little kid, had hair down to his waist, and he had the moves. Well, they were friends with Poison because his dad was a DJ. And so anytime Poison was anywhere around, Tim Austin was the DJ's name. He would take his son Austin, and they'd go hang out, and they'd take Austin on stage, and he'd wear his little Richie. So he had him a custom-made little half-scale BC Rich guitar, and he'd do the moves, and everybody just loved him. Well, one day the guys noticed, hey, he's playing for real.
Yeah.
He was sharp. Yeah. Oh, that kid was talented. And they're like, he for real is playing chords. He for real. Who's he,
Who's teaching him?
Who's teaching him? And it was me. Well, fast forward to a few months. I don't know ever how long. Austin took lessons from me for a while. And CeCe DeVille was falling off the stage drunk and having issues, bless him, and couldn't handle it. And so the record, I found out through Tim, because Tim told me. He called me up and he goes, CeCe and Brett Michaels are coming to blows. And he said, they're done with him. The record label says he's got to go. The management company says he's got to go. The guys in the band say he's got to go. And they're looking at you. He goes, I told them about you. And they said, well, you get her to Kansas City. And if she, can she play our stuff? And Tim's like, dude, she's playing your stuff in clubs every weekend. She's playing Boston and Kansas and Zeppelin and Heart and doing the leads. And he's like, yeah, she can play your stuff. And I could very easily. And so so they said, get her to Kansas City. We're coming in, whatever the date was. And they said,
this is huge.
Yeah. And they said, get her there. I was living in Springfield, and they go, if she can play they're like, bring her backstage. We'll put a guitar in her hand. If she can play our stuff, he's out and she's in. I had it. All I had to do was show up. Now that is every guitar player's dream. Just dream. And of course I wasn't going to turn that down. Yeah, I'll go.
Yeah, hitting the big time.
Shoot, yeah. And I'm a songwriter too. And I thought, man, there's hit songs coming and everything. Not that I had the ego, but I knew. And so the day came, I had this disquieted feeling within me. And I thought, well, I'm probably just afraid of success. I'm just nervous, And I thought, man, I can't wait to get there and get a guitar in my hand. I can't wait. Because I wasn't nervous about playing. I was just, hyped. I was just the energy. And man, something kept gnawing at me and gnawing at me and gnawing at me. And I thought, man, I'm just a wuss. I'm just nervous and scared for no reason. And boy, the day came and he swung by. You know, Austin was asleep in the back seat, and he swung by and picked me up. And man, the further down the road we went, the heavier I felt. Just this oppressive, heavy, unpleasant feeling, and it got worse and worse. And it got to the point where I didn't just think it, I knew. If I went to Kansas City and met these guys, I'd die. It was real. It was palpable. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to die. But there it was. Now, I tried to override that, and I had, or I wouldn't have even gotten in the car to go to Kansas City. But I kept overriding it and overriding it. No, I'm just scared of success. It's just me being stupid. I'm just being a dork, you know? And I just... Finally, in Clinton, Missouri, I couldn't stand it any longer. I thought, man, is he going to have a car accident on the way there? Is he going to get in an accident on the way back? Is something going to happen there? You know, but I knew death was waiting at the door for me. And it was so real that I told him, I said, dude, I can't go. He goes, what do you mean you can't go? I said, you drop me off. He said, what's wrong with you? I said, I don't know. And I didn't. I'm like, I don't know if I'm having an allergic reaction, if I'm having a physical problem. I don't know what this is, but I know I can't go. And so he dropped me off at this mom and pop restaurant, this truck stop restaurant in Clinton, Missouri. And he went on down the road. He never spoke to me again. He was so mad at me.
Sure.
He didn't understand it. I didn't understand it.
He was giving you an opportunity of a lifetime.
Oh my gosh.
And you threw it away.
Yeah. And I was down on myself. I thought, what the heck? But I thought I was having a psychic premonition. It was a psychic premonition because that's all I knew to call it. I was so ignorant of supernatural things. And I was like, this is supernatural. And I felt so dumb. But I was like, I can't go. And that heavy, pressing feeling of doom lifted. And I could breathe. I'm sitting there in the restaurant. We didn't have cell phones in those days. And I called my mom. Mom? Yeah, I'm like, can you come and get me? She goes, where are you at? I'm like, I'm in Clinton, Missouri at this restaurant. I'm like, it's right on the highway. It's, let's see. And I'm looking. I'm like, what's the name of this restaurant? And they told me, I'm like, it's, whatever it was. And I said, I said, I can't go do this. She said, yeah. I thought, she knew the Lord. And she was like, okay. So she came and got me, and that was the end of that. I didn't know.
So what did you do?
I went back home and kept playing with my band and kept teaching, and Austin's mom brought him to his lessons from then on.
How much potential money did you throw away?
Millions.
I met Justin, and I know Justin more than I know you, your husband. Mm-hmm. And if you'd have went down that road, you wouldn't have met him.
No.
And you wouldn't have had those financial challenges that he had, and all of that drama that brought you to Rhema. Yeah.
Well, and here's the other side of it. I didn't know I found out, I kind of, you just know. I kind of knew it was God, but I didn't know who or what God really was. I just thought he was this bang the gavel, I didn't know his love. Yeah. And I didn't understand so many things. And after I did, and when we came down to Rhema in 2010, I found out, I learned, I was taught what a check from the Lord. And I'm like, that's what that was. Yeah. That was, I knew it was you, but I didn't know it was you because I wasn't sure because we confused ourselves. And I was like, that was a major check from you. And then I discovered, because another thing happened that's every songwriter's dream. And this is what blew the lid off in 2014, 2013, somewhere around in there.
So a decade later.
Well, at least. I got called to Branson to do a recording session.
13 you said?
Yeah.
So 20 years later.
2013. Yeah.
20 years later.
Yeah. I got called to Branson to do a recording session because I'm a studio musician too. I mean, I've played since I was 4. I was semi-pro, already making a little bit of money playing right out of high school. Dropped out of college to go on the road with a heavy metal band. So, But I went to Branson and I was doing a recording session. It was actually my sister's recording session. And I didn't recognize, I didn't know the guy who was doing the engineering and the you know, on the recording, but I was like, okay. And so we're hanging out and she goes, well, what are you doing? You know, what's some of your stuff? And I said, oh, and so I don't know what the guy was doing. He was setting things up and doing whatever recording engineer guys do. And we're just jamming. And so I went over, you know, a few of my songs with her and we just jammed. And I went over, you know, I must have gone over 6 songs. I don't remember, but so what happened was, he gets on the phone and he's out the door. And I'm like, that's weird. And I kind of got a little salty about it. I'm like, well, that's really unprofessional. You're supposed to be in here finishing the setup so she can get her stuff recorded. And out the door he is on his phone. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And so he comes back in and my sister was like, you know, she goes, your songs are more ready to record than mine. She goes, why don't you take some of my recording time, which is unheard of. If she hadn't been my sister, there's no way this would have happened. She goes, why don't you take about 30 to 45 minutes of my recording time and just go in there? I said, hey, that'd be great because, you know, I can just sit down with my acoustic. I can run through these songs just, you know, back to back. And he's like, oh, yeah. And I said, the mix you would do would be enough that I could make a little CD that I could sell in coffee houses, you know, gigging out. Be better than anything I could record and mix. So sure. So I got in the studio, put the headphones on me like this, you know, sitting there with my guitar, and we'll just do a 1-track 1-3. You know, he did my I forget how we did it, but anyway. And so I was just going to run through. He said, just give a few seconds in between songs. And I said, well, I'll let you know the BPM when we, you know, for each song, you know. And he goes, oh, we're not going to put a metronome to it. And I'm like, you're not? And he goes, no, we'll just go for a live feel. And I'm thinking, okay, he's running me through like cattle. You don't record without a click track. It's like I was getting ready to say, okay, the first song's, you know, at 92 BPM, and the next one's at, you know, he goes, no, we're not going to mess. I thought, oh, great. Okay, well, this is going to suck. This isn't, he's not. I thought, how can he be in here and not be pro? I'm like, no, he's just running me through like cattle.
Did he know something different than you knew?
Well, I launched into the first song, and he's setting things. And I launched into the second song, and he set things. And by the third song, he's out the door again. And I'm like, what the heck? No, that's right. I didn't do all 6 songs. I only did 1. And then she said, your songs are ready. And so, well, so he recorded me with these 6 songs, and then he's out the door again. I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, dang. Well, he comes back in, and when I came out of the studio, he goes, I don't think I formally met you, which shakes my head. He goes, my name's Kevin Dunn, and I'm with Time Warner Records. I'm with Artist Development. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he's like, you just pitched me 6 songs. And in my head, I'm going, I did? Okay. Apparently I know what that is now. And he goes, all 6 songs are commercially viable. And I went, okay.
Yeah, what does that mean?
And he goes, no, you don't understand. He said, I could have people. He said, you're why I'm down here doing what I'm doing. I'm like, okay. I'm still not. I'm like, okay. And he goes, no. He goes, I could have 10 songwriters that have hits current on the radio right now walk in, and they could pitch me 6 songs each. And out of all of them, 2 of them might actually be workable to be hits that we could, if we worked on them, refined them, tweaked them, changed them, then recorded them with the right artist, you know, they'd be good. He said, you're 6 for 6. That doesn't happen. And I went, okay. And he goes, you got any other songs? I'm like, yeah. He goes, how many? I'm like, I don't know, 18, 20, I don't know, lots, a whole folder full. And he goes, are they all this good? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, you tell me.
They're just, I wrote them the way I write. I don't know. And he goes, he offered me a recording contract right on the spot. He's like, I'm signing you. I'm like, sounds good to me. And he goes, now these songs can't. And so in the weeks after that, we had phone conversations, and he's like, you know, these songs can't be your babies. I'm like, hey, they're not. And he goes, he said, how do you feel about, out of those first 6, how do you feel about selling 3 or 4 of them? Because we need to get your name out there known for the songwriter you are. And I'm like, I'm fine with that. You know, so he started talking, he goes, well, and then so he starts kind of making plans. He goes, well, and he was really upfront with me. He said, now here's the deal. This is the industry standard. He said, you sign. He said, now Time Warner Records is going to get, the lion's share, 60% of everything. I said, okay. He said, I get 20% as the producer and you get 20%. I said, well, he said, at least one of these, he said 3 of these are hits. Billboard top 10 hits and maybe more. And I'm like, that. I said, I'd rather have 20% of
something than nothing.
A big something than 100% of nothing. So sure. Well, I felt that little, and I'm like, that can't be what no, I'm not going to pay attention to that. That's no. And so, and so he's like, yeah, he goes, and Warner Records will of course own 60% of everything that you've written. And I went,
of everything you've written?
Everything I record. And then he said, you'd probably, you'll be on the hook to do 2 more CDs, but it doesn't sound like that's a problem. I'm like, no, it really isn't. But I was like, man. He said, everything I've written that I record with them and everything I will write that will be on future CDs, they own 60% of, and I get 20.
And how long is this contract?
3 CDs worth. And he goes, they'll front you $10,000 for the first CD. They'll pay, we'll go to Nashville and we'll get it done. And he said, now when it comes time to promote your CD, they'll put you on tour, warming up for other acts and everything. And he said, but you've got to go do your concerts to promote your product. And I'm like, yeah, I understand that. And he's like, he said, the only other thing, he said, I like to be real upfront with people. He said, the first $10,000 made in the sales, they take. So it's going to be a little bit.
Because they fronted you $10,000.
They fronted the money. They invested. And so, he goes, so for a little while, you're going to have to foot your own way and you won't really see any money for a bit.
Yeah, that's why you get the upfront. So that you can afford to go.
Until they can pay off. No, that $10,000 pays for the recording of the CD. I get.
Oh.
Yeah. And then when the CD starts selling, they take the first $10,000 in profit from the sales, and I still get. And it wasn't about money with me, so I really wasn't balking at that. But on the inside, this feeling, and I tried to ignore it. I tried to pretend I didn't hear the Holy Ghost. I'm like, And he starts telling me who they're going to market my songs to. And I didn't recognize the names because I don't listen to a lot of commercial music except what my students bring in to learn. And so I don't have time. And my husband's like, he goes, do you know who these artists are? And I'm like, no. And I go, they're not Christian, are they? And he goes, no. And I'm like, oh. And he goes, they're the opposite. And I'm like, why would they want my songs then? Because my songs are all about the Lord. I've lived every song I wrote. And he goes, And Kevin at one point, he goes, oh, some of these you won't recognize by the time we're done with them. And that scratched me again. And I thought,
yeah, that's not okay. Why would you want to get somebody's work and not recognize it when you're done with it?
Yeah. And so finally I understood that the Holy Spirit was telling me no.
How long were you a Christian at this time? And the previous time, like in 93, were you a Christian at that time?
No, I wasn't.
So how did God lead you without being a Christian?
That is an interesting question. There was just a gut feeling. People call it intuition. My mom used to call it that little bug.
I say
nudge.
That the Spirit leads.
It's a nudge.
The Bible says
if you'll listen.
The Spirit bears witness with your spirit and draws you to God.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, I've heard other people describe it as a nudge.
Yeah.
And it is.
Yeah.
And if you're going to walk too far out of his plan, I won't call it a shove, but boy, it's hard to ignore it.
He has absolutely jerked me back in line several times.
Thank you, Lord. So he showed me several things during that. So I had to just let the whole record deal go. And I threw a temper fit.
No way.
With my little Pampers on, my little Rhema. I had graduated from Rhema at that point. I graduated from Rhema, my husband and I both did in 2012, and then I graduated from School of Worship in 2013. And I thought, Lord, I have been a worship leader. I was a worship leader at New Song Foursquare Church in Branson for several years.
So what did you do about this record deal?
I didn't pursue it. I turned it down.
You shut it down just like poison. I
shut it down, yes. And then I went to God and I said, what is with you? Do you just not want me to succeed? What is your deal?
Yeah, why are you putting these big opportunities in front of me and then shutting them down?
Juicy carrots in front of me and then you take them away. Why? And I was really, like, this is poison all over again. What, bud? And so I'm like, well, I'm just not going to write any more songs. I can't record them. I'm married to a fellow that has a degree in production, television production, broadcast production, media, and he owned a recording studio in Branson, and he can mix metal like nobody's business. He can mix rock and metal and anything else he wants, but he's really good at metal. And I love jazz and metal, and I'm like, and we don't have any equipment. And he's like, well, I can't produce. Well, you know what? Neither could I. And I was just like, I'm done. I'm like, there's no point for me to write any songs. You're never going to hear them. I can't record through my temper fit.
Sure.
Before the Lord.
That's natural. That's
Throw
normal.
myself in the floor, kick and scream.
Yeah. Yeah, probably not literally, but
in the spirit,
emotional things.
In the spirit I did, and I needed a spanking, but the Father just stood there and just let me go. And so I'm not writing any more songs ever again. And so ridiculous. And
yeah, he is amazing, the way that he deals with us, the way that we need to, exactly the way that we need to receive.
If I would have needed a spanking, I'd have got one. But he just, okay, baby,
Yeah, loving.
He's really loved me. And so then a few weeks after that, after I got through throwing my temper fit, I got a call from Darcy at Rhema, and he goes, hey, we've got a guy that's recording a couple of 30-second ads for the city, and he needs a professional guitar player to come in because he needs, several tracks, multiple styles, and, are you interested in making a little extra money? I'm like, well, sure, always. And so I talked to the fella. His name was Greg Pendergrass, and he goes, yeah. I'm like, okay, sure. And he goes, well, I don't have a whole lot of money because then, I don't know what it is now, but then the going rate for studio musicians was $100 a song, $100 a track. And so I'm like, no, I won't charge you that much because I just didn't feel right about it. And so we ended up in this studio across from Rhema in this building. And so I went in and I figured out what he wanted, and I ended up doing like 4 guitar tracks for him, a couple of Motown tracks, couple of, and he was thrilled. And so he paid me, the little bit I charged him. I think it was only like $60 or something. But I listened to the stuff that this guy who was also a Christian was recording, and he would ask this guy, now, do you want drums that sound like this? Listen to this project. This is what I did here. Do you want something like that? He's like, well, no. And so I got to hear the stuff that he was working on that he was currently recording. And I'm over there going, this sounds as good as the Warner Records guy's stuff. And I'm like, whoa, this guy's really good. And on the inside, the Holy Ghost goes, pitch him your songs. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess I know how to do that now, apparently. So when we got done with that recording session, I talked to him. His name was Kyle Simpson. And I said, Warner Records, turned it down, but I got these songs and I'd really like to produce them and record them. And he goes, well, let's hear them. So I played 3 songs and he's sitting there listening. And he goes, yeah, there should be a Journey keyboard in that. I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I'm hearing. And so we sit there and I'm telling, and he goes, oh, and I'm hearing like a trash can. And I'm like, yes. And so he goes, yeah, I'll produce you. I was like, okay. And so we worked together and collaborated, and we did my CD Reclamation. He did a fantastic job on it. So now I've got this CD, and I don't know what to do with it.
What year was this?
I released it in 2016. And it was like, I've still got it. And at one point, it was on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and all that. But I was getting a check for like $18 a year from Google. And I was like, okay. And what they were doing is they were selling my songs for 99 cents a download. And then out of that, I was getting like a fraction of a penny, enough to amount up to $18. But I wasn't getting squat. And I hold the copyright. I own them. I wrote them. And I really regret this. Temper fit, I jerked their permissions and pulled them.
Could you have increased the price on that and
Nope.
gotten the difference?
It's all through them. Now I could sell downloads through my own website, which I'm working on getting. I do have, Legato has its website, but I don't have mine. But I was just like, but I should have consulted with the Lord before I did that, because they should have stayed. So now I'm working on getting them put back on iTunes and Google Play and all that. I'm putting them back, where people have them available, because it's really not about the money. It wasn't about the money when I jerked their permissions. It was just me, it was a principle of the thing.
Yeah, what's fair?
Yeah, because here's some time ago, and I don't know how many years, and people would probably, there's somebody out there who knows when it was, but there was this big summit held in like Switzerland or somewhere, I don't know where, about protecting the artists, the songwriters and the artists. Well, what they ended up doing was just making it worse. We have less rights than we had before over ownership of our own stuff that we write, our own intellectual property. So that's just what, but I don't know. But anyway, I discovered through that I was really angry at the Lord for the whole poison thing. And my sister, this is some of the odd ways that the Lord works with me. My sister had read a book by Mickey Dolenz, who was the drummer for the Monkees. He wrote a book, and my sister was like, that's a pretty good book, and you should read it. And so I'm, okay, I like to read. So I read it, and I grew up with the Monkees, and I always saw them as just this beautiful, clean band, and they were actually actors before they were musicians, but I always kind of held them in high regard because they, didn't have the appearance of getting into the drugs and everything that so many people did. And I read through Mickey's book, man, they hung out with the Stones, and they hung out with the Beatles, and they hung out with this and that one and the other one. And they did get dragged down into that. Mm. And they did, a little bit, not as bad as some, but a little bit. And I thought, dang. And when I finished that book, the Holy Spirit said, I like to read at night. So I was in bed and I was reading, and I actually read that book in the morning too. I normally don't read in the morning unless it's a Bible, but because I wanted to finish it, and I got done and I heard the Holy Spirit as clearly as I ever heard anyone. He said, "And do you think you would have fared any better than they?" Yeah. And he scrolled through my mind. I saw Hendrix. And I saw Randy Rhoads, who was Ozzy's guitar player. And I saw all these artists scrolling through my head that died of drug overdose early, that died young and died, in not good circumstances early. And he's scrolling all these artists through my head. And I was like, because I was never really interested in drugs. I was never, music was it for me. But
roads and paths lead to situations
and people and influences. Yeah. If you hang out, and then this is one of my husband's favorite things. He says, if you hang out with a bunch of, people that rob stores and, criminals, gangbangers, then you're going to become the next gang member. If you hang out with a bunch of millionaires, you're going to become the next millionaire. You can't help but be influenced. And so the Lord showed me that. And it really humbled me. And then he showed me, and this is something I haven't told anybody, and this was very recent. I saw more about it here just a few weeks ago. There would have been a time when I would have stood in my mansion, my big old empty mansion in LA with millions in my account, with a broke down body, bad health, no love in my life, empty. And the Lord showed me a picture. That's the best life, right? The Lord showed me a picture, of me that I would have shook my fist at him and said, "Why did you let me do this?" Why did you let me go down this path? Why did you let this happen to me? He said, you would have been there. And I was just like, it broke the rest of whatever anger or frustration I would have had right out of me. I was like, because I knew it was true. And I was like, oh my. And I look at my life now. I've got my husband, I've got my kids. I have now, our daughter they're expecting their third. She's got little. She's got one that isn't 2. They've got one that's about 9 months old, or coming up on a year almost. And then they've got another one that'll be born in November. And I look at Legato. The Lord literally dropped that in my lap. I had been teaching there for a year. And then the owner called me one day and said, yeah, we're going to close it down. I'm like, dude, why? He's like, well, I've got something else, and nobody's wanting to buy Legato. So I've had it on the market. And I'm like, dude, we're looking for a business to buy. And he's like, this stunned silence, because I was the newest teacher there. And he's like, well, I'll make you a deal if you want to buy it. And so he told me the figure, and I went to Justin. He's like, oh, yeah. So I bought it.
Was it as good of a deal as you guys got on your house?
At least.
That kind of thing?
Oh, yeah.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
He basically sold it to me just for some taxes he still owed on it. And I paid him. I went and got a signature loan. Didn't even put Legato on the chopping block. I just took out a signature loan, paid him. He paid the back taxes. I got the receipts. Because when you're dealing with the government, you better get receipts. You better.
Oh, yeah.
And that was it. Done deal. Legato's mine.
So what do you do with Legato now?
I teach a lot. I've got a full teaching roster. And I have, there's Alaska Holloway's our vocal instructor. She's amazing. She was on season 6 of The Voice. She is just solid gold. She was at Legato long before I ever was. So we've got Legato.
So you kept the team somewhat?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Alaska. Tyler Klein is our newest drum instructor, because our previous instructor, Adam, he just left. He had to move to Georgia for a few months to take care of his mom. He wants to come back, and we want him back. But I have Tyler, and then Sean Abari teaches recording, mixing, mastering. He also teaches guitar and keys and bass. And then Sandy Heinz teaches piano. Will Whitekiller, he's been my student since 2019. He just graduated with a degree in cybersecurity, and he's really into guitars. He builds them. He does all our guitar tech work. He's really sharp kid. And then Carrie Daughtery is our newest instructor. Well, no, she's not. She teaches violin, clarinet, flute, voice. Jeff, whose name, I apologize, Jeff, I cannot pronounce your last name. Starts with a B, but I won't even try because I'll butcher it. He teaches trumpet for us. And then we brought, is that it? I feel like I'm leaving somebody out, but I don't think so. That's 7 teachers. Yeah.
So you guys instruct
music lessons.
Lessons.
Yep. From beginner. And if it's guitar and it's advanced or pro, it comes to me. I take all the advanced students, anybody wanting to go pro. I take them, but yeah, we'll take somebody beginner. It's never touched an instrument before. And if they've got the heart to play, we can help them do it.
And you sell some equipment as well?
That's another story. Yep. We're primarily and always have been a music school. I have grandparents who bring their grandkids in for lessons, who took lessons there themselves from Larry, the previous owner, back in like 2011, or, it became Legato School of Music in 2011. Before that, it was called Full Scale Guitar. So it's been around a long time. And we added music retail almost 2 years ago. Again, that was a God thing. He told me to do it. I didn't want to because, I can listen to a piece of music And I do this with my piano students as well as my guitar student. And I tell them, monkey here, monkey play, monkey write it down all day. I'll listen to it. I'll learn it. I'll write it out. I'll write it in sheet music. I'll write it in tab, whatever you want. I'll write it out and I'll teach it to you. I just lost my train of thought.
So you opened
Yeah.
Sales Center.
We did. We through a series of events of students that had less than stellar customer experiences at places that I was suggesting they go get their instruments. After several rounds of that, I was like, okay, I really don't have a local store that I would recommend them go get a guitar at. As a matter of fact, I was mad over one thing that a student of mine really, it didn't turn out right for her. And I recommended this particular box store, and I was like, oh boy. And I was like, I was griping to the Holy Spirit about it. And he goes, we'll do something about it. And I'm like, I did. I called the manager and I talked to him, and they won't make it right. And they won't do anything for her. And I sent her there. And so the Holy Spirit gives me this silent kind of standoffish, like, because I knew what he showed me and I knew what he was saying. But, again, why do we think that we're going to, well, I don't know what you mean. No, I knew what he meant. And I was like, oh. And I walked out of my studio in the little place where Legato was, where it always had been. And I walked out, and in my spirit, I saw slat wall on the walls, which is what you put the things in to hang the guitars on, when you see those strips on the wall. Slat wall. I saw slat wall on this wall and that wall. I saw basses and guitars. I saw amplifiers. I saw the counter. I saw a mini music store in the front of Legato, and I was like, Oh, I know why I was telling you about writing out music for people. I can do that all day long, and it's effortless for me. It's easy. I enjoy it. I love it. Don't ask me to balance a cash drawer. You don't want me doing bookwork where you're doing monotonous, where you're adding and subtracting and you're balancing bookwork and you're doing the accountant thing. It won't be good. It won't turn out good.
They have other people that can do that.
Yeah, I end up frustrated because I do what logically makes sense and it never works out right. And I end up having to do the same equation 15 million times. And I am not good at that. And so I'm like, I didn't want to do it. I'm like, that's bookwork. That's math and stuff. I don't want to do that, But it burned in me and I saw it. And I can't not do what the Lord has in my heart because he and I are like this. And when he wants something, I really do too. I'm just like, so I didn't know what I was doing. I was asking for help from everyone that I know that might possibly know how to do this. And I'd get little snippets of advice. Oh, you do this and oh, you do that. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll try. And so, yeah, I made a mess of things. I mean, not as far as the products go. I know what to carry and I know how to carry it. But as far as, the first 2 point of sale systems that I had were just, the first one was a scam. It just never worked. And then I got another one and it was all right. But then I came to find out after, almost a year that it wasn't good either. And I'm just like bumbling my way through this. But I did it. And so then we outgrew where we were.
What did you find as a POS?
What I use right now is Clover. What I had before was a thing called, I think they were called Heartland, and they were a nightmare.
A lot of people use Square, right?
Yeah, I use Square. So when people come and they take lessons at Legato, I don't have a lessons coordinator. They're a monkey in the middle, and all they do, despite their best efforts, all they do is really bring confusion and mess things up. It's much, much, much better if the student can just, with their teacher. So the teachers do their own scheduling. And when the students pay for their lesson, they pay the teacher directly because that is the simplest and the easiest for the parent and easiest for the student and easiest for the teacher. It's just easiest. And that's the way it's really always been with the lessons industry, you know, unless you've got a big corporate type setup where they have a lessons coordinator and, you know, they automatically bill and whatever. Well, that's just a bunch of extra headache, and it's frustrating to the parent. You know, I taught in a place that did that, and it was not the smoothest, you know. There'd be confusion sometimes, and it was just the way I do it, it works for everyone. So that's how we handle that.
So you'd use Square for something?
I use Square for my lessons. So when people pay, when they're my student and they pay me for my lessons, they're like, "Can you take a card?" Yeah. So I have a tablet up front that has Square on it. So when they pay for me for their lessons, we just swipe them on Square. That way it's separate from the retail, completely separate, because service is different than merch. Merch has to be sales tax and the state and all that.
So why use what you're using for your equipment sales? What is that product again?
It's like we carry guitars.
No, the POS.
Oh, Clover.
Clover. Why use Clover for that?
Because for one thing, it tracks my inventory. I know what I have, what I've sold, what I need. And they calculate the sales tax. They do all the calculating of the sales tax. So all my husband has to do is print out a report saying, you know, I owe, you know, ever how much. I owe $113 in sales tax that we collected to the state this month. So we go in, my husband goes in to the website for the state, the OK Tap, whatever it is, and, you know, fills out the thing, and, you know, we owe this $100 and whatever dollars or ever how much in sales tax that we collected, and they withdraw it from the Legato account. Ding, dang, done. Just easy.
So you guys are still doing all your accounting in-house? End of year stuff, you sub that out?
We're doing it right now, but we're also hiring an accountant, and she is like,
transitioning.
Yeah, we're transitioning right now. So by the end of the month, we will have this accountant taking care of everything. Hallelujah. Thank you, Lord, because I know it's a lot extra on my husband with him working on Home Champion, and that is going great guns. That, you know, he doesn't need Legato bookwork on his plate anymore. And I'm really, you know, and I've told him, you know, thank you, because he knows I don't have the patience and the ability. I have the ability, honestly. If I absolutely had to sit down and do it, I would be frustrated. There would be tears, and I don't cry easy. Let me tell you, I am not a crier, but there would be tears. I would be like, oh, and it's just, it's horrible for me. It's torturous for me to try to do bookwork. I hate it, but.
So you started this equipment sales side of the business after you referred people to other companies and they didn't perform. What's the difference in what you guys do for your customers compared to what they were experiencing?
Well, every guitar that we sell, if it doesn't get played and vetted, we don't put it out.
So you guys review, inspect, play, go over the guitar before it's ever handed to the customer? Oh,
yeah. And so what we do is, just a few weeks ago, so we got a new line in. I'm a Guild dealer. I'm a Dine dealer. I'm a Vox dealer. But we just signed on with a place called Arts Affiliates. And so thereby I can get Marshall amps, which I have one, a little, 30-watt Marshall practice amp because I wanted one in the store. And we can carry Mitchell guitars. Well, I looked forever. I looked under every bush, under every tree. My purpose, my husband's like, oh, you added a new revenue stream to Legato. Nicely done. I'm like, no, I want affordable stuff. My dad, the guitar I learned to play on was like, it was, the strings were 10 miles off the fretboard. It was hard to play. I didn't care. I played anyway. I played through the pain of playing a guitar that's so difficult to play that my fingers would be as red as my blouse when I got done playing. I didn't care. But I'm like, nowadays, they can make a really good affordable guitar that plays nice if they will. Well, finding one was hard. I looked for years. I found in Dine, the reason I carried Dine was I found they had a guitar called the Vendetta. And it played almost as nice as my $2,000 Ibanez. And I was like, ooh, this is what I want. But yet they were $200. I'm like, this is exactly what I want. I want really good instruments, really affordable. And we added layaway. I asked my husband, we got to have a way to do layaway, because the only way we could Christmas shop for our kids when we were going to Rhema, and even before we moved down here, was layaway. And I'm like, we need layaway for people. And I'm like, I didn't add it for a new revenue stream. I added it because I wanted people to get quality stuff, that wasn't cheap and janky. I've sent back some stuff. If I pull it out of the box and it's a cheap, janky thing, it goes right back from whence it came. And I've told reps, I've said, I will not carry this in my store. This is a cheap piece of garbage. I will not carry it in my store. And I send it back. But so these great Vendetta guitars, man, those were selling because they're great instruments. They're easy to play. And they discontinued them. I was like, no. And I bought every last one they had. And I finally sold out. And so I started researching, and I started talking with some other pro musicians I know. And they're like, there's this brand called Mitchell. And they're like, they'll buy them to take, to take on the airline as a practice guitar, because airlines are known to trash your instrument. They just do. And if they trash a $200 Mitchell, fine. If they trash a $5,000 Taylor, not so cool. And that happened to a friend of mine. So it's like, well, and they're like, these guitars are really good. Well, based on them, it took me almost a year to get a Mitchell dealership, but I got it. And I ordered them, and I just got some in a few weeks ago. And they play like a dream. They're a little heavy. That's the only thing I don't like about them. They're a little bit heavy, but they play like a dream. They're quality, and they're $220 for a really nice instrument. It's not a cheap piece of trash. So we got the first ones in, and I was like neck deep in lessons, and we're running out of guitars. So I told my employee, and then Will, who teaches for me, who I mentioned earlier, he does all our guitar tech work. He just happened to come tripping in the door that day, and he sees all the boxes coming in, and I'm like, would you guys get these out? I said, Will, check them. And because he knows how I like stuff to play. And so I come out of the back, and this was before I got my hands on them. I come out of the back, and there's guitars out there, and 3 of them have little sticky notes on them, the Post-it notes that won't hurt the finish. And one of them says, fret buzz on the first 3 frets, needs neck adjustment. Another one said, this one needs a neck adjustment. Another one says, needs action lowered. He said, I made myself notes on them. I'm like, cool. And he said, because he wasn't teaching that day and he had other places to go. And he said, when I come in Monday, I'll take care of all of them. I'm like, thank you. And he did.
Nice to have a good
set
team.
Them up, got them taken care of. I played them like, yes. It plays like a professional guitar especially compared to what I started on. They play nice. The strings are nice and low. That's called the action, where the strings are nice and low. And when you play it, you don't hear a rattling, where the strings are rattling on the higher frets when they're not supposed to be. That's called fret buzz. Sometimes in shipping, the neck might go a little convex or concave, and so that can be adjusted out and, get them all nice and adjusted and ready for their new owner. So that's what we do. And there's no box store going to be doing that. They're too big.
Do they even offer the service?
They do, and they charge. There was a student of mine, and we were talking about this earlier. There was a student of mine that bought a guitar, and she, was coming to her lessons. Now, she was a teen. She had a job, and her agreement with her parents, they paid for her lessons, but she bought her own guitar, and she paid for everything to do with her guitar. Her strings, if she needed them, picks, capo, whatever she needed, she bought herself because she had a job. So I noticed her struggling with her chords, a little bit more than really I thought. That's a little, So I was keeping my eye on her. And after about the 6th lesson, and her chords weren't smoothing out, and they should have, by the 6th lesson, you're building up your calluses and you're developing some control and some strength, and the chords just smooth out pretty well. And that wasn't happening with her. And And I was watching her. I'm like, your thumb position is correct. Your technique is correct. There's no reason you should be having problems. I don't think it's you. Let's trade. You take my guitar and I'll take yours. And she nailed her chords. And she was like, I was like, that's what I thought. She nailed her chords. They were perfect. No dead notes, no nothing. And I was like, okay, it's not you. I played her guitar. Oh my gosh, it was a piece of trash. I didn't tell her I shouldn't say that. But it was not
up to standards.
Not up to standards, not by a long way. The strings were huge. They were way far up the neck. It had some fret buzz. It just wasn't set up. That's called a setup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So guitars and speakers and amps, you sell that. Mm-hmm. Do you sell anything else?
Guitars, basses, all the accessories, guitar straps, guitar strings, bass strings, drumsticks, drum keys, practice pad, drum set. I let our drum teacher coach me in that because I'm net in the first reader on drums. I know very little about them. So he coaches me on that. We've got some drum heads, keyboards. I have a Korg dealership, which that's a God thing because Korg is one of the top brands. I mean, everybody thinks, oh, Yamaha, Yamaha, Yamaha. I've had a Yamaha. I've played a Yamaha. They're okay. There's nothing wrong with them, but I don't like the feel. There's just, and each person is different. There'll be people out there that, I wouldn't play anything but a Yamaha. They feel great. Well, I play a Yamaha and it feels, I have yet to play a Yamaha that doesn't feel, just my opinion. They're not cheap. They're well made, but to me, they feel cheap. I just don't like the way they feel. And in the sound, I'm just like, it just seems like there's something missing. I just don't like them. And so I thought, Korg is really good. And lo and behold, Korg actually gave me the time of day when I contacted them. And I told them about, the music school's expansion and how excited we were to add some music retail so that our students have access to some really quality stuff. And they were, So they're like, Legato School of Music, welcome on board. We're a Korg dealer and we're a Vox dealer. And so, we carry Korg and they feel sturdy. They feel, they've got keyboards, most of their keyboards. Now their synth does not have weighted keys. Weighted means they've got that nice, stable feeling. Mm-hmm. But their B2 has semi-weighted keys and it feels nice. And the sound, there's nobody that would argue that Korg doesn't have it down when it comes to their sounds. They sound full and good. There's nothing, when I play a Korg and I hear a Korg, I'm like, I am thrilled that we have them because there's nothing missing. Yeah. So, yeah.
So wind instruments, you guys give lessons for wind instruments, right? Some. Yep.
I have, like I said, Miss Carrie teaches, clarinet and flute. I'm actually in the market looking for a brass teacher and a woodwind teacher because, and here again, I'm just baby stepping. The next thing the Lord shows me to do, I do it. And the next thing that's presented to me, and he says, yes, I do it. So the other thing that came with this arts affiliate thing, because I just wanted Mitchell guitars. That's really that was my thing. I wanted Mitchell guitars and Mitchell basses. And what ended up coming out of it with me talking with them is they kind of started romancing Legato. They're like, would you want to get into band and orchestra equipment rental? And I was just like, never thought of that. It never occurred to me. And so in the spirit, I kind of felt like, and I'm like, I'm like, well, how does this work? And they're basically like, well, everybody does their rental. Now we do have paperwork at Legato that we can fill out that we will, but they said basically people go online and they rent online, and you become the hub. So we can fill out paperwork and we can do paperwork, but we're the hub. And we just got a shipment of instruments that we've got a catalog in. But yeah.
What type of equipment?
It's like violins, violas, cellos, saxophones, trumpets, whatever school band needs, we're going to rent it. And if
that's a big step.
It's a huge step. And we've spent, me and my one employee have been training on their software, how to do rentals, how to do returns, and they're going to do something. And I wouldn't necessarily have looked, really considered it. But when I looked at how they do rentals, I'm like, that's how I would have done it if I was going to do it.
So these rentals, they're kind of long term, like for school season or something like that?
Well, they are and they aren't. So the way the art affiliates are doing rentals is that a person comes in and they're going to be running this thing. And I'm like, this is amazing. I'm really proud of this. That what they're going to do is, I don't know if they started in August or September, but they're going to have a special where parents can come in. And this is what they told me. Parents can come in and they can rent an instrument for their kid for $5 a month for 2 months. So they have that window where they've not invested, $50 or $40 or whatever the rental would be.
Yeah, get their feet wet.
Yeah.
See if their children actually want to do it.
See if little Johnny's going to want to really play trumpet. See if the little girl really wants to do violin or whatever. And so they don't have a whole lot of stuff invested up front. And if it turns out that the kiddo is like, I don't want to do violin. I want to do clarinet. Well, they can bring it in, trade it in, and say, okay, well, bring in the violin. Here's a clarinet. Bring in the violin, and it carries over. So they don't have to do a whole new contract or anything like that. And then after 2 months, if they're like, they're sticking with it. Well, what they've paid goes, of course, towards the payoff of owning it. They can switch their instrument at will. Doesn't matter. If they've paid X number of dollars, if they're paying like, I don't know, I'm just guessing like $32 a month or whatever on a saxophone, and little Johnny's like, can I switch to trumpet? Sure. Just bring it back. Take your trumpet. You're still on. You're still good.
And all of that money floats
right over and goes towards the pay of that.
What a deal.
Yeah. If they damage it, bring it back in, replace it. Yeah.
Sounds like a no-brainer.
It does. And here's the other thing that they're doing that no one else is doing. A couple of things. One of the things is that they will... Okay, so there's a story behind this. So here about a year ago, our violin teacher, who had been with Legato since way before I bought it, she got a hold of me and she's like, I knew she was pregnant with I think it was their 4th kid, and it was a little boy. And she had the little boy. Well, she was teaching kindergarten. And now she's got 3 kids plus a baby, 3 girls plus a boy. And her specialty was working with special needs kindergarten. Pre-K and kindergarten special needs. That's her heart. And she had an internship that she finished and everything. And she's just like, she comes to me and she's like, I don't want to leave Legato. She goes, but my husband and I talked, and something has to go off my plate, because I'm like, well, yeah, you can't do everything you're doing. And she goes, I want to come back, but I have to stop for now teaching. I just can't do it all. And I'm like, that's fine. Well, I had to teach violin for a little bit. And I didn't tell people that I used to play violin, but I used to. So I had to teach violin for a little bit till we found Carrie, our violin teacher. And I needed a violin. And we weren't, this was way before we added music retail or anything. No, it was along about the same time now that I think about it. And so I was like, well, I'll just rent one. So I called the only 2 places in Tulsa and Broken Arrow that rent band equipment, and I couldn't rent it because I'm an adult. They only rent to kids, school kids. And I was like, oh, shoot, I'm going to have to buy one. So I did. I bought one, through one of my dealerships. And I still have it. Anybody that wants to buy it could, because I don't have the time to practice it. But anyway, so, arts affiliates will rent to adults. They'll rent to anybody that wants an instrument. Now, it won't be the school rate, because it'll be an adult instrument, so it won't be, at the same rate that a school kid would, but they will rent to adults. And I'm like, yes, please and thank you. And the other thing they're doing that I've never heard of is they have 4 grades. You can rent a new-to-you instrument, is what they call it. It's a used instrument that's been refurbished, and they have 4 grades. They have, I don't know if they put a letter in front of it. It's like a P1, P2, P3, P4, or a D1 or something. I don't know, some letter. But anyway, but different grades. One of them is some scratches, obviously used, but not bad at all. And one of them is a little more scratches and one of them is a little more. And one of them is like, okay, it does show wear. It's fully functional, new pads if it's a horn or whatever horns need. It's been completely redone and refurbished, but it does have some dings. It does have some scratches, but you can rent it way cheaper. That way you don't have to rent a brand new instrument that costs X. You can rent one of the used ones for less. And then if at any point you're like, this kid's played all year long, she's really into it, he's really into it, we'd like to get him a better instrument. We'll bring that one in and get a new one. Everything you've paid goes to whatever you end up with. Everything you've paid goes toward it. They just transfer it over. So you've already paid as much as you've paid goes towards the new one. Or maybe the next grade up. Maybe you're like, well, we had the really janky beat up one. We'd like a used one, but nicer. Bring it, trade it in, get the nicer one. Everything you've paid goes towards what you've already done. So you don't have to start over. And I'm like, man, if I were going to set up a band instrument rental, an orchestra instrument rental, that's how I do it. And I'm like, cool.
So how is this life compared to the life that God showed you would have occurred if you would have went with poison?
It is literally dark and light. It is literally night and day. And nothing against the guys. I mean,
Yeah, it wasn't your path.
No, it wasn't my path. The Lord said, look what it did to Cece. I was like, oh, I never thought of that. Duh. It's night and day. I may not even be on this earth. I quite literally, physically might just be gone for some time. I sure wouldn't have had my kids. There's no way I would have had my kids. And man, you talk about having a rich life. Those kids, man.
You wouldn't have had these simple, meaningful relationships with parents, grandparents, employees.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I tell you get attached. I get attached to my students. I get attached to my, I consider, the parents become friends. Good friends, and the students, one thing, Adam, our drum instructor that had to leave, June, the last day of May was his last day. And then, he's in Georgia now, but he told me, he said, it's with a heavy heart I leave. He's like, I'm really attached to my kids. I'm like, I know. That's why, I've had offers here and there to go play, and I have there for quite a while, I was asked to go down to EMIC, Kenneth Copeland's church in Texas, and fill in for their lead guitar player who would on the road with his band. And I did it quite often for a long time. And I've gone to Branson. I go here and there, not as often, but I'll go here and there and play. But I got to thinking about it one day, and I thought, what if I did go on the road, to do a series of concerts? I thought, I wouldn't want to be gone that long. For one thing, I wouldn't ask my students to wait on me to continue their lessons. I mean, how prideful would that be? Arrogant. But on the other hand, I just miss them. If one of them texts me, they'll text me and say, hey, little Johnny has a fever. He's not feeling well. I'm like, oh no. I'm like, well, I'll see you next week, and I hope he gets better quickly. And, I'll be praying it. Man, I'm right there on the phone. I'm like, I plead the blood of Jesus over him and his family, and I'll rebuke sickness. I'm like, you get out of their house in the name of Jesus. And I do. I'll pray for him. And, you get really attached. Yeah. I can't put a value to it. It's not a life I'd give up by any means.
So where is Legato?
It is in Broken Arrow. The actual address is 816 South Elm Place. We used to face Houston Street, and we were little. Then we moved across the way, and that's a whole other, I could tell you God stories from now till kingdom come. I've got
But 81st and Elm.
81st and
basically.
Elm. And we face Elm now.
And how do people get in touch with you guys?
There's legatoschoolofmusic.com. They can message us from there. And our phone number is on there. It's our phone number is 918-955-0290. It's our phone number. And it's textable, callable, messageable, whatever, how you want. Or you can just come in, Most of the time, you won't see me because I'm in the back teaching. You'll see our employee up front. But we have a big, nice waiting area for the parents and students, and we have our music retail up front, and all the studios are, in the back, and they kind of surround the waiting area so you can hear. I love it when I'm back there and I'm hearing the drum studio going, and I'm hearing the violins squeaking in the violin studio, and I'm hearing pianos tinkering in the other room, and I hear somebody, doing their vocal exercises, their wee, and it's all going, and the place is like rocking. I'm just like, it's literally music to my ears. I love it.
We have launched Tulsa Street Talks as well.
Awesome.
Where we go to people's places of business. We would like to take this to your place one day.
You should. Yeah.
We'll do that.
You should come in on one of our evenings when we're really busy and the studios are hopping and the parent waiting area is full and music is just popping, and it's just life.
Yeah.
It's life.
Yeah. There's a bunch of different ways to live and experience life. And that's why we're doing Tulsa Talks and Tulsa Street Talks, is to encourage people to connect to themselves and their surroundings better.
Yeah.
I look forward to doing this.
Awesome. I look forward to it too. Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am.
We are here to help you discover or develop your passions, how you can use them, and why you exist. How can we help you help others better?